Hi sisters. So the Holy Grail of menstruation, which is a space that I'm currently in as I share this video, in the sacred menstruation immersion, which we are beginning in just a few days if you are watching this before we begin the 29th of March, is an immersion and a call to retreat into working deeply with your menstrual cycle for 5 weeks with me. And the first week, which we begin next week, the week of menstruation, we tuck into the 5 chambers of menstruation. And when we enter into the first chamber, which is the chamber of separation, and I'll explain separation and what that really looks like and feels like in my body, it's an ineffable experience. It's an experience that you really can't miss, and the more we work consciously with our menstrual cycle, the more powerfully we're able to enter into the Holy Grail. And the Holy Grail happens in that chamber of separation. And for me, in my experience, what this feels like and what it looks like is, so firstly it can happen the morning I wake up. I'm already in that separation space. Or it could happen during the day, throughout the day, when I'm moving along and all of a sudden I feel my being dropping into, quite perfectly put and termed, separation. And the chamber of separation is the most spiritual dimension of the menstrual cycle. And many women miss this phase, or this part of their menstrual cycle, because especially when we're rushing and we're going really hard in our daily life, in our lifestyle, we tend to take this time of separation and this tension as dropping into rage, or maybe there's a sense of depression. It's a time when our inner critic in the premenstrual cycle becomes really loud and really strong. And if we're not able to hold that tension, we miss separation. And we find many other states of disassociation begin to occur. So we really dissociate from this time, which is actually very spiritual. And the separation time, you can feel your body and your being literally separating from the right here, the realm that is very physical and very, very polar opposite to ovulation, where ovulation is very external, very much in form, very much in your reality. And the separation time it's the opposite of that. It's like a pulling apart. It's a time where your body is calling you to hold the tension between what is here right now, your reality, and when the veils get peeled away in separation, moving into the spiritual dimension. So, and that's where, if we're doing it consciously, we drop into the Holy Grail, which is a time, and this takes months, if not years, to move through. When you finally enter Holy Grail, because you're consciously entering into your separation chamber, there's immense power that comes from the Holy Grail. And really, you're setting up your entire menstrual cycle and how you're about to release and flow and renew through being present in the separation time. So separation it's different for every woman. I've experienced separations that last a day, a few days. Sometimes separation happens maybe just for a few hours. And sometimes it comes and it goes. Sometimes it happens just before you bleed, and sometimes it happens on the day you're about to bleed. And often it's just before the bleed, so it's in your premenstruum, and it is yeah, it's just before your body begins to bleed. So what happens in the Holy Grail? We'll really be going deeply into this during the sacred menstruation. But what happens when we enter the Holy Grail, and why it's so important to be there, is because you're holding the tension. And we talk a lot about this during the immersion, the tension between the positive, the negative, the via negativa and the via positiva, the dance between the feminine and the masculine, your dance between surrendering to your menstruation and then activating your ovulation, and what kind of mystic powers each of those cycles represent for you. But essentially the Holy Grail is, it's that wisdom that gets fed through the pelvic bowl. It's the movement into working with your sacred fluids. So all the fluids held in this sacred space of where your yoni is, where your womb is. The elixir of love is the menstrual cycle, which is the same as the amrita for a man's ejaculation. That amrita is, that's where all the wisdom comes from. That's where the blueprints of creation reside. So it's like we need to separate from this, from here, from now, and enter into a space that is calling us back home, that space of deep emptiness and separation. And that's exactly what it feels like. It feels like your body drops into it and you're like, oh my God, I'm so empty, I'm so separated. And there can also be an overwhelming sense of abandonment. And if we just hold that tension and we don't drop into the inner critic's dialogue of it and the mind's narrative behind what this abandonment really is, or what the separation really is, and we really hold the tension in that, we begin to understand that that emptiness is a cosmic emptiness. And so during the immersion, I'm taking the women through this combination and this merging of womb cosmology into traditional Tantra, because in Tantra we work with that dance between the emptiness and form, and bliss and consciousness, creation and dissolution. And the menstrual cycle is a perfect pathway into understanding your innate nature.